Hello, grade 7. How are you? I hope you're all safe and well. Today, our lesson is inquiry. We will talk about the rock cycle. So we should have questions, evidence, and explanations. We can use this lesson in our projects to take ideas from this lesson to continue with our projects. Asking questions. First, how can we ask a question? We studied in inquiries lesson before about how can we ask questions, how can we obtain evidence, how can we suggest explanations, and all these. So today we will talk about rocks. How can we ask, or how the scientists ask about rocks? This picture shows some geologists at work. Geologists don't just collect rocks. They ask questions about the earth. How was the earth formed? What it's made from? How and why does it change? So these are geologists. Geologists are scientists study the origin of earth, the structure of the earth, how the earth formed. So these are the geologists. They just don't collect these rocks. They have to ask some questions. How this earth formed? How why do we have mountains? How the mountains formed? Why do we have different types of rocks? And how do they formed from in the first place? So all these questions they ask themselves. Early evidence and explanations. For many years, people have wondered about this question. What makes mountains? Scientists worked hard to answer this question. They made careful observations. They thought about their evidence and used it to create explanations. For example, 1,000 years ago, Ibn Sina of Kazakhstan observed layers of rock in mountains. He described his evidence. We see that mountains appear to be piled up layers by layers. So this is Ibn Sina from Kazakhstan. He's a scientist. He was wondered about the mountains, how these mountains formed, or what makes these mountains. So he came up with explanation, and he said we can see the evidence, and he said that we can see these mountains like layer over layer. Piled up means accumulated, like something gathered together. It's not hollow, it's not empty. No, it's these are layers formed a mountain. So Ibn Sina considered the evidence. He wrote an explanation. So the next one is his explanation. It's therefore likely that the clay from which mountains were formed was itself at one time arranged in layers. One layer was formed first, and then at a different period of a further layer was formed and piled upon the first, and so on. So he was looking at these mountains, and he said the clay itself, it's like from these mountains, it was formed and at one time and arranged itself in layers. So first we have clay, and then one layer of clay. After after a while or years, another layer of clay came over this and accumulated. So on, each time one layer is dry, the other one will come on the top of it, and in this way the mountain was formed. 800 years ago, Chinese thinker Chu Hisi found fossilized seashells on a mountain top. He considered his evidence and realized that the shellfish once lived in the sea. He created an explanation. Everything at the bottom came to be at the top. So this scientist, or he's a thinker, he saw these fossils, which is seashells, he saw them on the top of the mountain. So he wondered about them, what brought them here. So the only explanation that he said, they had to be in the bottom and something brought them at the top. So he said whatever down in the bottom of this mountain, one time or at one time it will come to the top. So all these are explanations for something that they can see. They have to think about it. What brought it here? What formed? What is it formed or composed of? So all these are explanations, which is like an answer for their questions. But they have to prove it. They have to work and prove their explanations. Now let's go to the next page, please. Piecing together the evidence. So how can they bring these evidence together just to form or to prove their explanations? Geologists continue to collect evidence about mountain making and about how rocks are made. In 1700s, James Hutton thought about the evidence. Could he create an explanation to link it all together? Eventually, James Hutton came up with an explanation. He called it the rock cycle. The rock cycle explains how rock changed and are recycled into new rocks over millions of years. It also answers our original question, what makes mountains? So about this Chinese thinker and Ibn Sina, they just have their own explanations about these mountains and rocks, but the original question or the main question, what makes mountains, James Hutton answered it. And he answered it by a theory called rock cycle. This rock cycle explains how the rock can change and recycled again into new rocks in years or over years and years or over millions of years. What is a rock cycle exactly? So we said it's when the rocks change and recycle to new rocks. So how the rock cycle is happening exactly? The rock cycle. Erosion wears down mountains. We studied about erosion before, and we said erosion is weathering with transportation. When weathering with transportation is happening, this is called erosion. So erosion can wear down these mountains, like we can say it can break them into smaller pieces. We call them sediments. These sediments make sedimentary rocks. When they gather together, they can make sedimentary rocks. So first, they were mountains. Then, this erosion can break them down into smaller pieces. These smaller pieces, they can gather together to make sedimentary rocks. Under Earth's surface, high temperature and pressure may turn sedimentary or igneous rocks into metamorphic rocks. So over the surface we have erosion. Under the Earth's surface, high temperature like 400 as we said, and very high pressure, this can turn these sedimentary or igneous rock, which is under the ground, into metamorphic rocks like marble. Okay, it can squeeze them and turn them into marble or slate. So this is another thing. Some rocks sink deep under the surface, they get hot enough to melt and make magma. So if these or some of these rocks got very deeply or sink very deeply in the mountains, the temperature there can make them melt, and turn them into magma. The magma is pushed upward. Okay, we have here volcanoes then. Volcanoes can push this magma upward. Some of this magma can cool and solidify and turn into what? Into an igneous rock, because we said igneous rocks are when magma cools and solidifies. So some of the magma cools and solidifies underground. Some magma comes out of volcanoes and solidifies on the surface. Igneous rocks are made. So whether this magma cooled and solidified underground, or the volcano pushed this magma out, and the magma solidified, cooled and solidified also. In this case, igneous rock is made. At any time, a huge force from inside the earth may push rocks upward to make mountains. This is called uplift. So here we have a question. Define uplift. So what is uplift? You can say when huge forces from inside the earth may push rocks upwards to make mountains. This is called uplift. What's the meaning of this uplift and how this force can push? This means that any type of rock, sedimentary, igneous, or metamorphic, may end up on a mountain top. So how can this form? We said earlier, some magma comes out of volcano. Okay, so also we said that high temperature and pressure under the surface of the earth can turn these sedimentary rock into metamorphic rocks. And also we said erosion can wear down these mountains, and sediments make sedimentary rocks. If these sedimentary rocks on the top of the mountains, or metamorphic rocks comes at the top of the mountains, and even igneous rocks came up to the top of the mountains, this is called uplift. Any force can push these from inside to out to the top to make it top in the top of the mountain. This is called uplift. Now let's take a look over on this picture. So here are the mountains. Erosion wears down these mountains and sediments are formed. So can break these mountains down, and this can be transported down. This is the transportation of sediments. Okay, transportation, then deposition of sediments. We can say they will sink down. This is deposition. And compaction and cementation. They will be like layers at the bottom of the ground. So here we have the magma. These sedimentary rocks, if they got down to the bottom of the mountain, these sedimentary rocks can sink down to the bottom of the mountain. The temperature and the pressure can melt them and turn them into a magma. Or heat and pressure at this layer can turn them into metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock, if this metamorphic rock melted, it will turn into magma. Or if this metamorphic rock cooled and solidified, it will turn into an igneous rock. If this igneous rock heated and a pressure applied on it, it will turn into metamorphic rock. So this magma, if this magma pushed outside, it will cool and solidify and turn to igneous rock. So see, it's like a cycle from igneous rock to metamorphic rock to igneous rock, metamorphic rock to magma, sedimentary rocks to metamorphic rocks. From sedimentary rocks it can turn into magma. So it's like a cycle or recycle of these rocks. So what about the uplift? If these igneous rocks pushed up, or metamorphic rocks up, or sedimentary rocks up, that means this is called uplift. This can make mountains again. This can make mountains again. So the weathering in general can affect mountains and break them down. These pieces or these sediments can go down deeply. They can turn into magma. This magma can go up and cools and solidifies, turn into igneous rock. These igneous rocks can turn into metamorphic rocks if heat and pressure applied on them. Metamorphic rocks also can melt and form magma again. So it's like cycle over and over again. And if these three rocks or these three types of rocks pushed out or pushed up the mountain, this is called uplift, to make mountains. Now let's take a look over the summary of the lesson. Geologist, a scientist who studies the origins, structure and composition of the earth. To develop explanations, scientists ask questions, suggest ideas and collect evidence. So as I said before, if they want to come with an explanation, they have to ask a question about it, they have to suggest, and they have to collect evidence about it, and then they can come up with explanation, and they can prove it even. The rock cycle shows how matter is constantly recycled in rock. So this rock cycle can show you this cycle in rocks can happen again and again and again, all over again, all the time, all over years. This is called the rock cycle. So this was all about the lesson. I hope you understood it. Don't forget the yellow box, and if you have any question, write it down, and I will check it later. Stay safe and hope to see you soon. Bye bye.